We're in Igeres HaKodesh, which are the holy letters of the Alter Rebbe. There's 32 of them, 32 different letters. And I don't know if it's a majority, but it's close to a lot of them have to deal with one topic, but from various angles, and that is the topic of tzedakah, of being charitable. We can't overstate the importance of tzedakah, of being charitable. By the way, all those that have joined, if they can put on their cameras, that would be amazing. It's much more inspiring for the teacher and the students to see faces, especially such faces. So, if it's possible, if it's not understood, so it can't be overstated the importance of tzedakah, of charity. As a matter of fact, the very first Jew, Avram Avinu, Abraham, what does Hashem say about him? That his greatness is that he commands his household, his family, his household after him, that they should keep the ways of Hashem, to perform tzedakah, righteousness, acts of charity, and justice. So the importance of it, I think we all have a natural feeling towards. We have an understanding because anybody who has learned anything about Jewish teachings knows that it has great value. Did you know that the basic commandment, though, comes in this week's Parsha? And it's interesting in how the commandment comes, what the context is. What is the context? It's speaking about Shemitah. Shemitah is the sabbatical year when all of the lands go fallow and it becomes what we call hefker. It becomes free for anybody to be able to take of one's property or produce from the property. So with this context, the Torah tells us, of course, it's going to be it will be in a person's mind, at least, for sure in one's mind, it's going to be a lean year. It's not going to be the fat of the land you're not going to have. It's going to be a challenged year. And therefore, what do you do in challenged times, right? Many people are going through now with COVID, challenged times. So what do? You tighten the belt and you scale back. And of course, when you scale back, what does that affect? Who's the first? The first infliction is not someone else. It's not me and what I'm going to have in my life, but what I'm going to give to others in their lives. Tzedakah. That will be the first thing. That will be less generous as a result, which is a natural, instinct of every human being. So we have this week's Parsha comes and tells us, let's take the reading. Here it is on our screen, just shared the screen. What does it say? It says, if there will be among you a needy person from one of your brothers in one of your cities, in your land, the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart, and you shall not close your hand from your needy brother. Rather, you shall open your hand to him, and you shall lend him sufficient for his needs, which he is lacking. Beware, lest there be in your heart an unfaithful thought, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, has approached, and you will begrudge your needy brother and not give him. And he will cry out to the Lord against you, and it will be a sin to you. Powerful words. These verses tell us. And from here we learn the mitzvah of tzedakah. I mean, there's many other instances in the Torah, but this is the primary mitzvah, which is actually two-pronged. Both positive commandment of giving and a negative commandment, meaning a prohibition, and that if you don't do so, then you're sinning to Hashem. Now, as mentioned, there are many places in the Torah that we can find reference in other instances. This is the main place of, as it says, "Asayach tiftach yodcha loy." Open your hand, a double opening, and you should give. Right? You should give. Here it's speaking about a loan. Well, we'll get more into that, or we're not going to get into all the details here, but we'll get into some. Now let's go further. That's in the Parsha, but we have a lot of references in the Talmud from our sages about the value, the importance of tzedakah. Text number 2 over here, Rabbi Isaac further said, 4 things can cancel a man's fate, namely charity, supplication, change of name, and change of conduct. Charity, as it is written, and charity delivers from death. So we see here our sages saying what it can do in dire circumstance, can deliver literally from the brink. Text number 3, also from the Talmud, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, who does charity habitually will have sons wise, wealthy, and versed in Agadah. Wise as it is written, and he shall find life. Life here is synonymous with wisdom. Wealthy as it is written, and he shall find righteousness. Versed in the Agadah, as it is written, and he shall find honor. Because when you're versed in the teachings, then you'll be able to have wisdom that you can share with others, and that brings honor. And it is written elsewhere, the wise shall inherit. Furthermore, as the Talmud continues, and we see in text number 4, it has been taught, Rabbi Yehuda says, great is charity, and that it brings the redemption nearer, as it says. So says God, keep judgment and do righteousness, tzedakah, for my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. If we want sources, we have a lot more. As we are learning, as I mentioned in Gersa Kodesh, again, the holy writings of the Alter Rebbe that he speaks to communities, many of those letters giving different angles of the value, the importance of tzedakah. Spiritual benefits, emotional, psychological benefits as we learn, and so on. Much of what we learn also is about the obligation to give. Obligation of Meiser, for example, which is 10% minimum, up to 20% that a person needs, and is obliged to give. We learn about the concept of giving before prayer, particularly in the morning prayers, the idea to give before candlelighting for women, and many, many details. But today we're going to go on an angle that is usually not spoken about, and that is the concept of kavanah, intent. That gets somewhat overlooked. Intention. What does that mean, intention? Well, we live today in in the information age where things are so automated, and as a result of automation, what does that bring to us? Things that are done not in a human way, without intent, without the human engagement, without the sense of one connecting with another. That's the mechanical world that we live in, right? So what ultimately is meant is that God creates us, as we learn, the mind and a heart, that what we know in our mind should feed our hearts, and we should do things, not mechanically, we should do things with a feeling, with intent, consciously, mindfully, an awareness, understanding, and so on. Because without that, as we learn in the first part of Tanya, those who recall, it is doing an act, a mitzvah, that it has a body to it, but no soul. The fact that we do something soulfully with intent gives spirit, soulfulness to what we do, and it brings it and makes it alive. So therefore, we need to understand, what does that have to do with tzedakah? How do we understand that? But before we get to tzedakah, let's understand this idea further. And let's take, next Shabbos will be Shabbos Mevorach, and we're going to bless the new month of Elul. And as we know, the month of Elul is the month before the high holidays, and we prepare for the high holidays. One of the ways we prepare for the high holidays, of course, is by blowing the shofar every day. We blow the shofar every day. So comes Rosh Hashanah. This year, Rosh Hashanah is on a Shabbos Sunday, so we only have the blowing of the shofar on the second day. We don't have the Shabbos. And let's say you wake up that Sunday morning for Rosh Hashanah, and you want to practice blowing the shofar. And you're only doing it for practice. You're not doing it with the intent, mindfulness, the awareness that you are now going to fulfill a mitzvah. And you blow the shofar. Not only that, but you did it outside, and a couple of your neighbors listened. Of course, they hear the shofar. It's Rosh Hashanah. Well, they're inspired, and they're thinking to themselves, "Oh, you know what? I wasn't going to go to synagogue this year because of COVID, and here I am. I hear the shofar." And you have in mind, even have intent to fulfill the mitzvah. Have you done the mitzvah? Have you fulfilled the mitzvah? Anybody? Stab at that? You actually haven't. You have not fulfilled the mitzvah. One does not fulfill, reading now from the Alter Rebbe in the Code of Jewish Law, Shulchan Aruch Harav, one does not fulfill their obligation regarding any of the mitzvahs unless the act was performed with the expressed intent of performing a mitzvah. Remember, you woke up in the morning and you were just practicing. You weren't doing it to do the mitzvah. You're going to go to synagogue and you were going to do the mitzvah there. Whether you're going to blow it or someone else, whatever, right? Thus, a person who sounds the shofar as a casual activity for practice does not fulfill this obligation. Similarly, a person who hears the shofar blasts from someone who sounded them as a casual activity, again, it's casual activity, does not fulfill the obligation, even if he intended to do so. So your neighbor's listening. Neighbor doesn't know what you're thinking. That you're doing the mitzvah for the sake of the mitzvah. You're doing this as a casual, kind of prep. So you have intent. It's COVID. You're not going to synagogue. Look at that. Whoa, God has been good. I got to hear the shofar. Guess what? In as much as the person sounding the shofar did not have the required intent, the sounds that were heard are invalid. Because the one who blows the shofar doesn't have intent to do the mitzvah for themselves, and they're not even aware of someone else. If they were aware and they were doing it for someone else, it might get a little more clouded. But what do we see here very clearly? There's a principle over here. Mitzvahs, tzrichos, havana. Mitzvahs need intent. They need an awareness of that you're engaged in doing the mitzvah, and I'm doing it for the sake of the mitzvah. That idea clear? There are a few exceptions to this, but we're not going to go into that right now. Okay? So obviously the question is, how about tzedakah? Charity. How does that fit in with this? Does it need kavanah? Do I need to have the full awareness of what I'm engaged in, of what I'm doing, and the fact that it is something that God wants me to do, and that I'm actually doing the act of charity? So let us take a look. Maimonides, what does he have to say? He's always our go-to source. The Rambam, whenever a person gives charity to a poor person with an unpleasant countenance and with his face buried in the earth, he loses and destroys his merit, even if he gives him 1,000 gold pieces. Wow. That's a pretty powerful statement, right? So at first blush, what do we see here? That this law speaks about the importance of the giver's demeanor. Meaning, if you did a mechanical act of being charitable, not enough. You need to have proper intention. Just as in every mitzvah, likewise in this mitzvah, you need intent. But is that really what he's saying? How integral is the intent? How do we understand this idea that it's as if you did nothing? It's a worthless act because you kind of buried yourself, or you didn't, you gave it in such a manner. How do we understand this? And why is it different? Is it seemingly kind of different than the shofar? Because shofar is about me fulfilling a particular act. Through the act of shofar, there's the idea of crowning God as king. The shofar is a matter of the spirit, even though there's blasts and sounds from the shofar, of course, but it's something to touch the spirit. So therefore, we understand that there needs to be intent, right? But hey, it's charity about. Guy's hungry. I gave him 1,000 dinners. Dinars, golden coins, even more than 1,000 dinners. I gave him. So what I was not, it's a lousy mood. But look, he got to eat. So what's Rambam over here? Why is that important? He got what he needs. How do we understand this? Question clear? Yeah? Thumbs up? All right. Wonderful. Okay. So, interesting, our sages address this question, and they resolve by finding evidence in a different field of Jewish law. The law is called shikha. That's a hard word to say. So one of the ways you know that, anyway, that's a hard word to say. Shikha. Shikha is the mitzvah that when a farmer harvests his field, after reaping and gathering the crops, he forgets some of the produce left behind him. Mistakenly forgot some of the crops. The mitzvah is you cannot retrieve it. You need to leave it there. Leave it for who? The poor. That the poor can come and have access to what you left over, again, from the harvest that you engaged in, you left it behind. As the verse says, here we'll share the screen again. So when you reap your harvest in your field and you forgot a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to take it. It shall be left for the widow, so that the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. Now, the Sifri commentator, the Medrash, in text number 8, continues and says, you have here on your screen, let me get it all up there. Okay. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, how do we know that if someone loses a selah, a coin, from his hand, and it is found by a pauper who then benefits from it, the Torah credits him with this mitzvah? It is for the reason the verse states, for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. Now, if one can earn merit even without intending to do so, the Torah considers it a worthy act, how much more so when one intends to do something worthy and carries it out. So what's the verse indicating over here? That God will bless us giving charity, even though we didn't do it directly, right? Just like the farmer. The farmer didn't do it directly. It was indirect. Left it behind, forgot it, didn't realize, had no intent, totally even unaware. And yet the person is worthy of reward. So halachically speaking, it seems to be pretty clear that intention and even conscious awareness is not necessary condition for the mitzvah of tzedakah. So the obvious question is, well, why is tzedakah and shicha different than the mitzvah of shofar? Why does the blowing of the shofar require intent and the giving of tzedakah doesn't? Well, we kind of touched on it, right? How do we touch upon it? How do we touch upon it? Well, mitzvahs that I fulfill, it's about me engaging in an act of a mitzvah. Tzedakah is unlike these other mitzvahs. It's not about me and my action. It's about me and the effect of my action. The effect of my action. What does that mean? When I'm blowing shofar, okay, now if I'm blowing shofar and you're gonna hear it, and you're gonna, I'm keeping you in mind to do the mitzvah, fine. But the fact is, I'm blowing for myself. The mitzvah is for me primarily, and I'm doing it for you also, right? But what's tzedakah about? Tzedakah is about giving to another. In other words, I can't do tzedakah if there's no one else to give tzedakah to. No one's in need. Everybody's got. Hey, can't fulfill the mitzvah. So when is the mitzvah fulfilled? When there's a recipient. And the fact is, it's not so much about the act of giving. It's more about the act of receiving. How is the recipient getting it? So it shifts the spotlight entirely from the donor to the recipient. What's the most important thing? The person got, the person's hungry, they got food. Institution needed money, they got the money. They needed whatever it is. She needs this, she got that, whatever she needs, whatever it might be. With this, then we can understand an interesting idea. Now, we speak about tzedakah being such an important mitzvah. By the way, I encourage everybody, if they can, put on their cameras. Those who didn't get a chance yet, it's wonderful to see everybody. If not possible, no pressure. So with this, we have an interesting answer to a challenging question, which I'm sure we talk on your minds. Tzedakah is such an important mitzvah. Why are we making a bracha over it? Should we make a bracha over? We make a bracha over everything in life that we do that's a mitzvah. Now we do make a bracha also those things we have pleasure from. You eat something, you have pleasure. You need to thank God for that pleasure, for that vitality that you're receiving. Fine. But in mitzvahs, you light a Hanukkah menorah, you make a bracha. Right? You read the Megillah important, you make a bracha. We make brachas on mitzvahs. The greatest mitzvah is tzedakah. Why aren't you making a bracha on it? Now, okay, make a bracha once a day. Just like Torah, learning Torah, you make a bracha once a day, right? In the morning blessings, you're not making a bracha. We're learning Torah right now. You don't get up and make birchas haTorah. You don't make the blessings of Torah right now. Now, if you didn't till now, so then you might have to go there right now, right? But the fact is that if you have made the blessing once in the day, it's good for the day. So aren't we making for tzedakah? So the answer kind of gave it to you. What's the answer? Because if the mitzvah was totally dependent on me, I'm learning Torah, so it's totally dependent on me. I open a book, I can learn Torah, right? I'm now going to light the Hanukkah menorah. I'm going to light the menorah. I prepared everything, and it's ready to go, so I can do the mitzvah. Tzedakah, though, it's dependent on another. When I'm ready to give, the person turns away from me and doesn't want it. Right? Person changes their mind for whatever reason. We made up. Okay, you needed some help. Here's some help. Da, da, da. And then last minute, the person, I made the bracha, giving it to them, and they walk away from me. We know that there's a general principle that you can't make a blessing taking God's name in vain. Well, if you were now going to make a blessing, and that person may not accept the gift, God's name is taken in vain. We can't do that. So because there might be that possibility, since the point over here really is to bring out the point. The mitzvah of tzedakah is all about how it's received, not as much about how you're giving it. Is that clear? That's the main point. So if that's the case, then how is the mitzvah fulfilled? When the recipient gets what they need. We've got a little problem over here now. Based on all of this explanation, it kind of flies in the face of what we explained in the Rambam earlier. Maimonides said clearly that even if you gave 1,000 gold coins, but you gave it not with a proper demeanor, right? It's not worth. So you gave it with a frown, you gave it with a sour face. You don't get the merit of the charity. Which means, of course, your emotional disposition, your demeanor, and how you're giving charity is important, according to what Rambam said. But meanwhile, what we just learned from the Sifri, the Medrash, the charitable intentions carry no weight on their own. All that matters is the final result. What's going on over here? How do we understand this? And actually, not only is this a stira, as we call it in the Talmudic jargon, contradiction between the Rambam and the Medrash, seemingly from what we're understanding right now. But even if you go into the Rambam himself, that's by the way, if you're a real Talmudist today, everybody gets their Talmudic caps on, making into real Talmudists. If you're a real Talmudist, and what you try to do is find a contradiction in the Rambam himself. Let's see that the Rambam, Maimonides, contradicts his very statement. Where do we get this? Well, there's the famous 8 steps of tzedakah, 8 levels of tzedakah that the Rambam enumerates. I'm going to go into them. But what we're really interested right now is with the lowest level. But we're going to go through all of this because it's quite interesting. Okay, everybody, see in front of you. Maimonides says, there are 8 levels in charity, each level surpassing the other. The highest level beyond which there is none is a person who supports a Jew who has fallen into poverty by giving him a present or a loan, entering into a partnership with him, or finding him work so that his hand will be fortified so that he will not have to ask others for alms. Concerning this, the verse states, you shall support him, the stranger, the resident, and he shall live among you. Implied, that's from Leviticus, implied is that you should support him before he falls and becomes needy. A lower level than this is now the second level, right? Then this is the one who gives charity to a poor without knowing to whom he gave and without the poor person knowing from whom he received. So if you give to a general kupa, general fund, right? And so you don't know who it's going to, and the person who's receiving doesn't know where it's coming from. A lower level than this is an instance where the giver knows to whom he is giving, but the poor person does not know from whom he received. A lower level than this is the instance where the poor person knows from whom he took, but the donor does not know to whom he gave. A lower level than this is giving the poor person in his hand before he asks. A lower level than this is giving him after he asks. Lower level than this is giving him less than what is appropriate, with a pleasant countenance. A lower level than this is giving him with sadness. Now, there's a lot here. We're going to get back to some of this right now. But right now, let's focus on the lowest form. It's giving with a frown. Now, obviously, it's far from an ideal. It's the lowest level. Granted, we're not arguing that. But it still counts. He gave with a sad demeanor. Seems to be that the Rambam is contradicting himself. So some commentators want to say in the Rambam that we're talking about two different emotions over here. What are two different ways? One is a scowl that is on the face versus harboring negative feelings without outward expression. So in the former case, where the giver is showing resentfulness in a visible, overt manner, there the Rambam says you lose your merit. The latter case, the donor's intent is in his heart, perhaps what he's thinking, but in that level is the 8th level, and therefore still considered the fulfillment of the mitzvah of tzedakah. So, what do we have from this? So we have from this that then the outward expression becomes the problem. The inward expression of that feeling, of that negativity, doesn't take away from the merit. Again, it's the lowest level, yes, but you still fulfill the mitzvah. But let's understand that. In the end, what are we saying? Most important thing is about the recipient and that they got, right? So what's the difference? That there was some outward negative expression. But in the end, they got. They received. They needed monies. They needed help, whatever it is. So there was a scowl. But they got. How are we supposed to understand this exactly? How does this make sense? Now, again, there's no doubt that there's a great value to do things with the proper intent. We're not here debating that, and of course, none of us here would do such a thing, to give and not to give it with absolute, devotion and love and so on. This is not about that. This is about understanding Jewish law. This is about understanding Torah, understanding principles. And in the end, when we get a full understanding of this, we'll have a deeper appreciation on how we need to go about the mitzvah in a more profound, appropriate manner. So we need to, say, like, Rabbi, who are you talking to? You're not talking to me. Every time I give tzedakah, I have a big smile on my face. I don't need this class. We need this class. You know why? Because we're learning Torah. And we need to understand Torah. It's not about understanding ourselves and where we're at and what we're doing and what we're not doing. Afterwards, you can apply Torah to yourself and, to where you're holding and what you need to improve and how to improve and so on. But first and foremost, it's a study of Torah over here. And through that study of Torah, yes, in the end, when we go through the entire process, right, of using our minds to appreciate the nuances here, yeah, we will be able to apply things that maybe, previously we didn't have a full understanding and didn't apply it as well as we could. So, that in mind. All right, question. Now, when Rambam Maimonides, he makes his order of the 8 levels. It's not arbitrary. It's very precise in the rankings, right? What, when I was reading it again, it just becomes clearer and clearer to me that if I were to ask you, what is the most desirable quality and characteristic that is necessary to be charitably giving? So finish the sentence for me. Finish the sentence for me. You can unmute. Charity is best when it is done with what? Give me the word. I'm unmuting you. Find that out. You're gonna have to unmute yourself right now. I can't find it. Unmute yourself and finish the sentence for me, please. Charity is best done with what?
Humbleness.
Oh,
Humbleness.
With humility. Who said that?
I did, Diane.
Hi, Diane. Thank you.
Hi.
Humility. Very good. Next.
What's that?
Sorry?
Love.
I didn't hear that, Linda. Say it again.
Love.
Love. Beautiful. When it's done with love. Who else?
With enthusiasm.
Okay, who said that?
Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Who else?
Whole heart.
Sharon said with heart, okay.
Zero heart.
Dignity.
Jason said with heart.
Yeah.
Demeanor.
With demeanor. Okay. Liana.
Joy.
Joy. Very good. Tim. Or Israel.
Havana.
With what? Kavana. What's the kavana?
Unselfishness.
Unselfishness. Okay.
Dignity.
Who said that?
I did. Yeah, Shoshana.
Very good. When it's done with dignity. All of you are correct. But the prize.
What's the prize, Rabbi? We get to donate
that you get to listen more to me.
We get to give.
That you get to listen more to me. Dignity. Why? Why? Every human being created, we're all created in the image of God, is created with a sense of dignity. What does that mean, a sense of dignity? That I have self-worth. I matter. I count. I have value. I have importance. Right? What happens if you have to rely on somebody? Especially if they rely heavily upon them. We may lose our dignity, our self-worth, our value. We may think, Mi ani omani, what am I? I have lost my sense of value. We all want to be able to take care of our needs ourselves and only to contribute to others. Right? That's what we truly would like to have. And you know what? This is expressed beautifully in benching. Grace after meals, Birkat HaMazon. See, in Birkat HaMazon, God, we say to him, Lord our God, please do not make us dependent upon the gifts of mortal men, nor upon their loans, but only upon your full, open, holy, and gracious, generous hand, that we may never be shamed or disgraced. Lose our dignity. that is a very painful thing that anybody goes through. I'm sure we've all experienced it one time or another. Now, ultimately, we all are recipients, but of God Almighty. And the blessing that we're asking and benching is, God, I want it directly from you. I don't want it through others, because if I get it through others, meaning I have to come on to them, in the end, I may be shamed or may be disgraced. Whether the person is disgracing me and shaming me, or whether it's just that I'm feeling the loss of my dignity because I have to come on to them, whatever the case may be, right? This is a common feeling. So therefore we're asking God, give it me directly from you so I don't lose any of my dignity. With this now, we can understand the Rambam's first and highest level of giving. How should you give? You're not giving a handout. I mean, maybe you're giving it as a gift, or maybe you're giving a loan because it's going to be paid, or you're getting them a job, or you're partnering with them. In other words, there isn't the loss of dignity. Second level is that either party doesn't know. Third level is that the recipient doesn't know, but the giver knows, because the recipient is not losing the dignity because they're not aware who the giver is, right? Minimal loss of dignity. So now we can understand further. Maimonides' last level is to give, but if you give with a sour look, right? Then it becomes a problem. Why does it become a problem? So, of course, just think for a moment. Person that's in need means there's a financial challenge that they're going through. There's a hardship, which then, of course, has, a psychological and emotional impact on the individual. And it's no surprise that a person is going to feel shame to ask for help. So what's the purpose of tzedakah? It's to alleviate the pain. But what if through the act that you're giving giving pain to the person? The whole point is to keep their dignity. The whole point is to alleviate the pain and the suffering that they're going through. But you're giving now in a way that it is giving them pain. Rambam says there's no merit. You lost your merit. Because the whole point is in how they receive it. Since you did it in a way that they lost their dignity. So that's what he's writing in the first instance, in the lowest level of the 8 levels of giving. There he's saying it in a way that, yeah, you did sour, but you didn't do it with such disdain that you took away the dignity of that individual. You didn't add joy, but you didn't add enough pain as in such an instance. So what comes out over here is an amazing idea that's unique about tzedakah. When we speak about intent in doing a mitzvah, like blowing shofar, or as we had initially the idea of intent, even when it came to tzedakah, so who's that about? Me. Shofar, I'm blowing shofar, it's about me being mindful, aware of the mitzvah that I'm doing, connecting to God, grounding God as Melech, as King. Beautiful. It's about me, right? So we thought also about tzedakah, is there that element of kavanah, intent? But that's all about me. Now what we've come is to understand that tzedakah ultimately is really not about me. It's about the recipient. It's not about us at all. It's not about me being altruistic. It's not about me being mindful. It's not intentions and so on and so forth. It's really about the other person. How are they receiving this? So therefore, your demeanor is very important. The empathy that we have towards this individual, sensitivity that we have in what they're going through is crucial. And on the flip side of it, the insensitivity, the lack of empathy, the bad vibes that we may be providing at this moment, and even though we're giving something, maybe we're giving them more pain, we're giving them less dignity than even in the fact that we're giving them some money, some food, or whatever the case may be, right? Because the idea of the tzedakah over here is to reduce the pain and to maintain the dignity. And if we gave in such a way so that maybe physically they got something to eat, but emotionally, psychologically, we've destroyed them. So the converse of this, of course, is very true. That when we do with a cheerfulness, them being empathetic, words of support, uplifting the broken spirit, comforting, and being human, sensing the vulnerability that they have and affirming their dignity. So this is ultimately what tzedakah is. Let's see in the words of the Rambam. Instead, he should give to him with a pleasant countenance and with happiness, commiserating with him about his troubles. As the verse states, did I not weep for those who face difficult times? Did not my soul feel sorrow for the destitute? And he should speak to him words of sympathy and comfort. As the verse states, I will bring joy to the widow's heart. So once again, all it takes is some empathy. I mean, all it takes. It's not so easy all the time. That's the truth. Think about it. We all live in our heads, in our world. And, someone comes and is in need. We may be going through things ourselves on an emotional, psychological level or whatever. And we may not be so attuned and therefore not necessarily always willing to sense the otherness and what they're going through. But ultimately, this is what it is in the mitzvah tzedakah. And with this, we can understand that the Rambam writes this law not in the laws of character trait, not in the laws, which is Hilchos Deis, which just finished reading a Rambam. He doesn't learn this law in the laws of Ahavas Yisrael, the love of another Jew, but he puts it in the laws of tzedakah. Because literally, the smile that we have on our face, the kind word that we share, the emotional support that we give. Sometimes we can't give the money. We're not capable all the time to give the money. But does that mean tzedakah can't be done? Or maybe we're giving. We're giving a far cry from what that person needs. It's a far cry from what they need. But you're giving. Okay. Giving a little bit. But remember, tzedakah is about maintaining the dignity of that individual and lessening the pain. So if you commiserate with that person and you have a kind word, a smile, an encouragement, that's charity. That's tzedakah. As the Rebbe writes, how do you do tzedakah for the wealthy? Well, someone has money. Does that mean they're not poor? Absolutely. You can have everything that you need and still be extremely poor. Poor of mind, poor in the heart, poor psychologically, and poor spiritually. So what we need to do is to be there for such an individual. Charity does not only mean money, because the idea of charity, as we're learning over here, is about maintaining the dignity of another who is in pain, who is suffering. That suffering is on many levels. So lifting up another person's spirit is tzedakah. I'm going to conclude with an idea that brings us to a completely new level. As to appreciate this idea to another to greater heights. So now it's about the other individual and the empathy we need to have for them, because tzedakah is about how the recipient is receiving, right? But it goes even deeper than that. The Medrash tells us an amazing vort, amazing concept. It says the Medrash, more than the benefactor does for the beggar, for the needy, the beggar, the one in need, does for the benefactor. Wow. Now this is turning things upside down now. Totally the opposite of what we just learned, right? In other words, we need to be empathetic. Why? Because the mitzvah is to maintain the dignity of this individual, lessen the pain. So the pain could be in the stomach, but the pain is not just in the stomach; it's in the heart, it's in the mind, and so on, right? It's all encompassing. And now I was saying, oh no. Me, Mr. Benefactor, is getting more than the person who received. Just explained that the whole thing is about the recipient. Now we're turning it on its head. No. Me, by giving, I'm gaining more. Am I gaining more? How am I gaining more? Anybody? What am I gaining? Gaining a mitzvah. I'm gaining an opportunity to attach to God through this act, through being empathetic, sensing the other. I am attached to God himself through that. Is the recipient attached to God through this? No. They got uplifted. They're maybe now feeling emotionally, psychologically, in a better place, right? That's wonderful. Not to minimize that, but that's what the Midrash is saying. Me, the benefactor, if I'm the benefactor, you're the benefactor, right? Gaining more. Because you gave a few dollars, you gave words of encouragement. Those are, in the end, material. And even if they're things of the spirit, they're limited. But what we have is a mitzvah, an attachment to God through this. And the attachment becomes something unique through this mitzvah, because every mitzvah we have an attachment with God. You put on tefillin, you're attached to God, right? In the act of putting on tefillin, lighting your Shabbos candles, you have an attachment to God. Right? Blowing the shofar Rosh Hashanah, of course, an attachment. Every mitzvah is an attachment. Mitzvah from the word, not just commandment, but attachment, bond, oneness with God. There's something unique about this. What's unique about this? Is that through this mitzvah, I become something together with God. And what is that? What's the ultimate thing that God ultimately does? He creates us at every moment, something from nothing, and he provides for us life, the breath of life, and everything in our lives he provides. But in the end, how does he do it? ultimately, we are his messengers. Some of the things God provides directly. The breath, no one gave it to me, right? I mean, unless you're exhausted, it's right in my backyard and filling it with pollution. That's only taken away, but you didn't give me the breath of life. That you didn't give. That's direct. But most things are not direct, even though we do ask and benching God, but in the end, it can't all be direct. Not possible, right? There's messengers of God, shluchim, emissaries of God. What does that mean? It means that when I'm giving, I am God's partner in the act of creation. Because the ultimate thing that God wants to do is to give. The act of creation is God giving. The act of feeding is God giving. The act that we now provide for another their needs, giving life, as God does. We become a partner with God in creation. I've spoken about this before, this concept that the ultimate thing in our relationship with God, there's many dimensions in a relationship that we have with God. God is our Father, we are his children. God is our King, we are his servants. God is our shepherd, we are his flock. He is our God, we are his nation. Many different elements in the relationship. Where God wants us to become is all of those, and all of them simultaneously together with his partner. We partner with him. Where do we ultimately truly partner with him? Is when you give to someone something they don't have. That is tzedakah. That is charity. Now, the basic idea is money, but it's not that merely teaching Torah to someone who doesn't have. That's why when you share the class, best thing is you should share what you learned. That you're giving tzedakah, in a sense, to others. But at least you press the share button. That also helps in that manner. But, this is the act. As God gives, we give. We give a listening ear when someone is going through troubles. We give advice. We give our love. We give our time. And of course, we give our money. When we understand that this is allowing me to fulfill the ultimate and what God needs of me, the fulfillment of what he created me for, oh boy, am I going to do that with a smile and be happy? Now I'm gaining more than what I'm giving. I'm the recipient. And when you realize that you're the recipient, then you feel further a closeness to the person you're giving, because then you're both on the same playing field. You're a recipient. I'm also a recipient of the capability that God is giving me, that I could be a partner with him, giving a few kopkas, a few coins, a few dollars, whatever it is, a smile, a warm word. Wow. That ever bring a smile, and to do that mitzvah of giving tzedakah with a full countenance, a full devotion as a result. This turns the whole thing totally upside down. And it becomes a privilege and a pleasure, as we say every day in our Tanya class. Any questions, folks? Powerful teachings.
Yes,
Our Holy Torah.
yes.
Yes, Charlie, you have a question.
As for a comment,
Go ahead, I'm listening.
as for giving to the
Question?
wealthy,
You have a question?
a comment.
Go ahead.
As for giving of the wealthy, compared to Mashiach's time, absolutely no one is wealthy compared to Mashiach's time. So that was wealthy.
So yes. So very good. When Mashiach comes, it'll be Ma'adanim Ka'afar, the Rambam says. Maimonides says that wealth, we will have all the delicacies of the world will be like the sand of the earth. It'll be so plentiful. We'll have everything in a plentiful way. So there'll be wealth. You're right. Material wealth, but spiritual wealth, there will still be people who will know more and have more what to share. So for example, all of you here, all of you come learn Tanya, you have a spiritual wealth that others don't have. That even when Mashiach comes, they're going to need, some guidance. So we will have what we can share with another as a result. Thank you, Israel. Any other questions or comments? Online, I don't see anything. All right, I guess it's clear. I hope it's not clear as mud. No? Didn't like that joke? No one smiled, no one laughed. All right. All right, folks. Good Tavach. Wonderful week. Thank you for joining. And actually, if anybody has any tzedakah next to them, I do. Take out. And if you have a pushka, make sure you have a pushka in your home. The charity box, very important. That way you can always be giving. And mine's upstairs, so I'm going to do it right after I get off with you. We shall do the mitzvah. All the best. Thank you again. A good week.
Rabbi.
Goodbye. Good class.
Thank you. For those, Diana, I don't know if we have your information, and who else said that was Chris? I didn't catch your name.
Krista.
Chris, yes. So you can all private message me if you have for an email, so we can keep you all posted on